Hello, thank you so much for coming in. This is Raheen and back with another episode. Well, I never counted episodes, but like with another part, you get it. And it's all about education, the future of education. And that's one of my favorite things to talk about because I feel it's very important and close to my heart. And today we have Kim with us. It's so great to have you, and I'm gonna brag about it. I am up 6 in the morning for this. So I'm usually up at this time. It's embarrassing to say it out loud now, but thank you so much for being on, Kim. Why don't you introduce yourself and then we can get this started?
No problem. Yeah, I'm Kim Flintoff. I'm recently returned to the classroom. I'm coordinating a program at a K-12 school in Perth, Western Australia. The program's called TIDES, which focuses on technology, innovation, design, enterprise, and sustainability. I've got a background in tertiary education. I began my teaching career as a drama educator. So my background is in performing arts and those sort of things. But over the years, I've sort of fostered an interest and engagement with technology and broader forms of educational tools and technologies. So that's sort of where I am now after 12 years in education, in higher education, working in universities for the last 12 years. COVID sort of saw a lot of staff in universities around Australia being made redundant. I was one of those, but I was very lucky that I'd found my way into a school setting that's very supportive and very future focused.
That's amazing. Now let's start from the beginning. And I let all my guests know one thing when I say beginning. I do not mean to say you're old, okay? But you are older than me.
I am.
I'm 13 years old. Come on, you're probably older than 13. So tell me how your personal educational experience was like. And so did you grow up in Australia, and how was education for you?
Yeah, look, I was brought up, I came up through a Catholic education system. I spent my years from year 4 to year 12 in a Christian Brothers college at the time. And that was probably not the most kind of situations. At that particular time, there was a lot of difficult and unpleasant experiences being had by students in Christian Brothers School in Australia. So there was a lot of physical, verbal and other abuse going on at the time. So we sort of encountered that, but in some ways we sort of took it as normal because we had no other sort of frame of reference. I enjoyed school to some extent. I enjoyed the learning process. I enjoyed the sort of the escape into new worlds of knowledge and those sorts of things. I was lucky at a couple of stages during my school career. I had the opportunity to actually have a lot more self-directed learning approach. So I had a maths teacher in middle primary school who allowed us to sort of explore mathematics in our own terms and those sort of things. And that was sort of my first insight into the notion of student agency and student-directed learning. And that probably came circa 1970, 71, 72, somewhere like that. So as you're right, I mean, I am certainly older than 13 and I'm quite old. But from there, I moved into higher education. I bounced around trying to work out what I wanted to do after I left school. I studied chemistry and physics. I studied sociology and economics. I studied psychology. I ended up graduating with a degree in theatre and drama, and then went and worked in the theatre industry and music industry for many years. I worked as a clown for about 6 years off and on. Then eventually I found myself working with some friends to establish a Theatre for Schools company. And so we were creating and performing original theatre in schools for kids, mainly with an educational focus. And that sort of took me the next step into reconsidering what it was that I wanted to do when I first left school, which was to be a teacher. And but I was told by my own teachers that that wasn't going to be a satisfying path for me. That turned out not to be true. I thoroughly enjoyed teaching, so I went back and became a teacher, became a drama teacher, worked around a bunch of schools for years. Took a strong interest in the use of technology in drama education, so that gave me the opportunity to then become a bit of a leader around the world on a special interest group for 10 years. and gave me access to all of those people whose books were sitting on my bookshelf and who were sort of inspirational leaders to me, suddenly became my colleagues and my peers. And yeah, so from then I sort of moved into higher education, teaching at university, teaching other teachers, teaching in arts and performing arts, teaching in interdisciplinary studies, a whole range of things over the years, until eventually I was actually teaching academic staff at university more effective ways to teach. So that's sort of what I've been doing for the last few years, and that's nearly 60 years now. So from the time I landed on this planet. So that's my approach to learning. I don't have strong memories of a lot of teachers during my school years. So there's one or two, but a lot of those school years were probably quite tough times emotionally and socially.
Yeah, I see. And I feel like it's a lot of people that I met and I've talked to about education. A lot of it is always inspired by their own experience with education. So you now coming into education and teaching, to what extent is it inspired by your own learning journey and your educational journey?
As I said, I mean, I've always enjoyed learning. I think I've become a fairly self-directed, independent learner over the years. I have an almost insatiable curiosity about all manner of things. But I've also found that some of the things that did stick with me from my early education were notions of social justice, notions of fairness, notions of inequitable power distributions, and those sorts of things. And I think that's informed a lot of what I bring to the classroom and what I bring to my teaching career and what I bring to my life generally these days. I find that I'm very active with groups that are focused on future, focusing on making the world a better place, focusing on realising the SDGs amongst other things, but also about empowering young people. That seems to be one of the guiding things nowadays, is trying to give young people the opportunity to explore their own agency, to actually allow their voice to step forward. So, I mean, if I could find as many young people with the confidence that you have in my daily life at school, it would certainly make that journey a lot easier. But it really is a lot of kids, I think probably I can relate to in that sense. I came from a working class family. I was first to go to university, so there was a lot of new things in my educational journey, which I think I can connect with some of the students that I work with these days.
I see. Now a lot of people, and again, me, I have a whole perspective on where the education system, and I hate to generalize, but right now it is very generalized view, where it's going. But in the future, we are, wanting to really just achieve the SDGs, which includes basically a better life for humans on Earth. That means fighting off climate change and other stuff, like hunger and poverty. And again, we're like, oh my God, we will do this. We are getting there slowly. But do you think the education that we have now is going to take us there or not? And if not, what would you think are big changes we need to make to get to our goal, to get to where we want to be as one humanity?
I think education can take us many steps closer to realising a more positive future. I think students, younger people generally, are actually more focused on the future than we were when I was younger. So I think we've got that on our side. But by the same token, I think a lot of contemporary education is very instrumental. It's very much about achieving a qualification, ticking a box, getting to a particular stage so that'll allow you to move the next phase. It's always seems to be about preparing to do something else. I'm not sure whether you've frozen there or not. I'll keep talking. You can tell me if it's dropped off.
Yeah, I can hear.
So I think with the program that I'm offering students, it's really about connecting them to real world issues, real world concerns, real world problems, and allowing them to start to shape and propose solutions for those things. So the mindset is amplifying those things. But I think our general school setting is very geared towards simply meeting curriculum requirements and focusing on some unspecified future. Whereas my attitude is that young people are living their lives. School happens to be part of their life, not simply a preparation for life. School contributes to their development and growth in many ways, focuses them on things that are ultimately not very important. So that's, getting your high school graduation, moving into the other things. There are so many pathways to learning nowadays that the traditional models that we've operated on perhaps become a little less of a priority. I think we can learn a lot from allowing young people to actually engage with real world learning, to really get out there, learn, and then draw the curriculum requirements from the student experience, rather than just saying, okay, today we're going to learn about how volcanoes are formed. We have a quick lesson on it, and then you regurgitate some information, and I could tick a box saying that you know how volcanoes are formed. Whereas if I sort of say, okay, there are people in the world starving, what can we do about that? That's a very different starting point. It's not starting with a set of knowledge. The basic set of knowledge is a generalization about the degree of food security and other things in the world. But that's a question you can ask anyone from kindergarten through to year 12, and kids will generally start to think about, okay, how can I make a difference? How can I don't think it's fair. Kids see the inherent inequity and unfairness in the fact that people are starving, that people are poor, that people don't have homes, that old people of my generation are making decisions about their future that don't seem to be taking them forward. So I think we need to be looking more and more at how do we actually empower student voice, and how do we actually let student learning guide the requirements of school, rather than actually having everything front loaded with curriculum and having a very, very predictable channel. Because we need to actually engage with the fact that the world is volatile, the world is uncertain, the world is very complex, and there's massive levels of ambiguity through that. So unless we actually let students engage with all that difficulty and all that challenge, I think we're doing them a disservice.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the points that you said, there's a lot of different like new educational models that come into mind, like personalized learning, and my favorite one, that is PBL, project-based learning. Because when you have projects, when you're presented with challenges, you think, you're thinking, you're not just, oh, I know the answer to that. Because it's not just one answer, it could be hundreds of millions of answers to that. But it depends on how you think. You're thinking and you're practicing thinking. You're not practicing your memorization skills, which is most of what here in Pakistan talking education is. My memorization skills were very nice, so I was an A student. But I luckily went to a school where, okay, yeah, there was a lot of memorization, but most of it was concept-based learning. So you memorize the questions and the answers from the book does not mean you're going to pass the test. No, because I went to the most elite private school in my country. We were blessed like that. But where are we right now at skills, in school? And I feel like to many people in Pakistan, especially, school is that one thing that can change your life. So parents that themselves have not went to school and could be from any background, they want their children to go to school in order for them to live a nice and comfortable life. That's the only way that they could see a bright future for themselves and their generations yet to come. So where are we at, like, providing skills right now, skills that actually matter, and skills that would actually equipping us with skills that really would make a difference and would help us living a nice and healthy, especially productive life.
Yep, look, I've been very lucky for the last 5 or 6 years to be working with a community of educators called the Learning Futures Network. And so it's brought me in touch with people who are already trying to make a significant difference and significant transformation of the way that we engage students in learning. In my own classroom now, you mentioned PBL, project-based learning. I take that to another level called challenge-based learning, where it's actually real world challenges, real world problems that need to be solved. So currently I've got my entire cohort of Year 9 students working to solve and to propose solutions and practical products and output for a group of upper gastrointestinal surgeons and bariatric specialists who have been living with and trying to combat the growing obesity crisis here in Australia. So like a lot of Western countries, we consume far too much. We don't have good knowledge of the food that we're eating. We've become more sedentary over time. And so my students are actually looking at, and how that relates to the Sustainable Development Goals, healthy life for everyone, access to quality education, health and well-being. All of those things start to come together. So we're doing that. But also my year, every year group that I work with is working on some sort of real world challenge where there are real stakeholders and the proposed solutions can actually be taken forward. So that's the classes that they have with me. In their traditional learning areas, they still, I think, engage in more traditional ways. There's more of that sort of topic test type approach to things. But we're trying to change that. I mean, the school here has a very strong commitment to developing a more holistic and a more engaged approach to learning. And so we're taking steps to start to build that transformation. So through the Learning Futures Network, currently we've got about 150 schools, mainly Australian-based schools, but there are some international schools involved as well. We're taking those discussions further and further. And a lot of the work that we've been doing here through that network and through some other projects that I've been involved with are actually starting to get global recognition and starting to have drive discussions in other parts of the world, which is quite exciting. Is that I'm sitting in one of the most isolated capital cities in the world, and the things that we're doing here are capturing the attention of others around the world. So for me, that's exciting. It keeps me interested, it keeps me engaged, and it also then starts to engage my students more as well, because initially I become the conduit for them to meet and engage with things beyond the school gate. They start to meet other people, they start to work with, some of my students have been working with solutions for one of our leading burn surgeons in the country here. She's a researcher, she's also an innovator in her own right, but the students have actually been looking at her working situation and making suggestions based on human-centered design thinking to improve her life and the lives of her staff in the potentially COVID-affected hospital environment. So we really do sort of engage with things that are happening in the world and things that will actually impact on my own students' lives as they grow older.
I see. And I really want to hit on something that you mentioned earlier as well, as to getting children to think, how do they want to contribute to, the society and the community that they have? How do they want to make impact? How, to recognize their own talent and the challenge they want to pick for themselves, for then on work on, solve, move on. That sort of cycle that will continue, hopefully, for their lives. Now, I have heard a lot of times, personally, though I do not believe in it. People say children nowadays, they're just on their phones, they're into celebrities, they're into the Kardashians or whatever. Okay, yes, they are. I'm not gonna lie, they're not. Okay, I love the Kardashians. Okay, I love a lot of social media. I love Snapchat and all.
Yep.
But I'm also a teenager that is concerned about what's happening around, slowly by slowly making the impact. What have you got to say about those people that just would be like, they're young, they cannot make a difference, they're on social media all day, they don't even think about it? Because I feel like there's an environment that's needed, and you need to create that environment to whatever relation you are, to whoever you're referring to when you're saying the children are on social media, the children are like this and all.
Yeah, look, no, as I said, I'm very much about the notion of helping students find their voice and find their agency, find their purpose. For some students, the area where I live here, we are not the most elite school in the country. We are in a working class area. We have a very mixed demographic of students in the school, some from very working class backgrounds, immigrant and refugee backgrounds, as well as some people from professional families and other things as well. So we've got a very diverse range. Some of our students are not aware of the world beyond their suburb and their city. They're not deeply informed about those things. So part of my process is to start to raise some of those larger concerns as a discussion point. Is just simply say, what do you know about these things? What can we do? How do you feel about it? You know, now that you do know, what do you think could be happening? And so you start dealing with all the initial first responses. It's very easy to just start suggesting things without fully understanding something. So then what I help them do is to scaffold a process where they actually have to start to investigate and understand more deeply. So we engage in that notion of empathy. I think coming from, because there is a religious basis to the school here, we also have a certain set of values that are foregrounded in a lot of the work. So we're not one of those sort of Bible thumping schools or anything like that. We're not a hardline sort of fundamentalist type school. We're very open to everyone. Everyone's welcome here. It's that sort of place. To the extent, you know, where our students are now stepping up and organising and suggesting things like Diversity Day events and you know, World Focus Days. They're participating in social and community service beyond the school gate, and a lot of those things are really simply about opening the students' eyes to the world beyond their immediate environment. And so that's one of the first steps. Then it's about saying, okay, now I want to offer you the opportunity to actually make a difference to that. So you can take the work, you know, the work that you produce, we can actually put in front of the stakeholders, put in front of the people who are affected by these challenges, put in front of the policy makers and the leaders who can do things. So we actually get student work in front of you know, people like you know, Professor Fiona Wood was one that we've been working with last year. You know, she was concerned about how COVID was impacting her operating theatre at a hospital where she works. And so we had students suggesting and carefully designing solutions that were being then considered by the engineering department of the hospital as for feasibility and those sorts of things. So it really is about making strong real world connections where students can actually see that someone is taking their voice seriously. Even one level, at a closer level to home, we have a group of students that I'm working with who their first project for the year was to look at, you know, you see the school that you're in, all of you see some things that could be improved. What's something that you would like to focus on, and then suggest that improvement. So the school executive was open to actually looking at all those proposals and considering all those proposals. And some of those are actually now being considered in terms of school development, school shifts and changes. So at every stage, what we're trying to do is really give students that opportunity to be heard and to see that being heard can actually start to make a difference. But they also learn how to nuance their proposals. They learn how to go from demanding change to actually offering solutions and those sorts of things. So it's quite an exciting journey. And as I said, I'm only just over 6 months in this school. So we're trying to sort of build this as a long-term program and building it into the core culture of the school.
You know, to the conversation we're having, I feel like you know, every class has its cool teacher. You're that cool teacher. Because, you know, every class I've had, there's a lot of teachers.
Not me.
I think you're the cool teacher. I personally think that, and I'd like to think that. But now, how was your experience being a drama teacher? I mean, it must have
Drama
been
teacher.
like all different things. So
yeah, look, I loved my years as a drama teacher. I was very lucky that not only was I working with students, I was also part of a very dynamic professional community across Australia and around the world. But in terms of the work in my classrooms, one of the things I did, and I continue to do these days now I'm back in schools, is to, as quickly as I can, get out of the student's way. And that I become I shift even out of being a guide on the side to almost being like a meddler in the middle. I'm sort of implicated in the learning. I'm not actually directing it all and guiding it all. So certainly with the work I was doing with drama, yeah, we explored through dramatic expression, all those sort of things. But also, I started to dawn on me too that we actually explored a lot of STEM education through those sort of ideas. We started to look at the world again. So we explored issues affecting people. So my students, in the last time I was teaching in a substantive drama teaching role, my students would regularly be involved with a local drama festival that was focused on youth health and youth mental health and wellbeing and those sorts of things. So they were always creating work. But again, it was underpinned by that demand for knowing and understanding the real issues. And then how do you represent those things creatively through a drama or through a performance? So that was a big part of it. In terms of the way the school started to operate, we started to get to the stage where I helped students establish their own performance company. So we actually established a company called Seen and Heard Youth, and it was a company that they used to be able to engage autonomously in work beyond the school. And we ended up with, apart from the work that was emerging from curriculum, students were also producing work and running lunchtime theatre and entering into external drama competitions and all sorts of other things off their own initiative. And I sort of saw my role was to enable that to occur. So a lot of what I was doing was really just sort of running around as a personal assistant to a lot of my students.
And yes, and I feel like to a lot of whatever I think of certain subjects and topics and all, it really is because of the teacher. I didn't like math for the longest time because my teacher was a little different than, well, what we'd expect a math teacher to be in all ways possible. But I feel like that really impacted how I saw the subject. But when again my teacher changed, I'm in love with math. Algebra is my favorite thing. I'm always like, what about that? Everybody says that. But I feel like it really, is about the teacher. And to many people, it would be because of how you were. Drama is again, one of their, I like drama, that sort of thing. Right
Yep.
now, what do you think we need the most to really just all work it out? So what is one thing we need to create for our own self?
I really think that notion of learning with purpose is really important. Is that everything that we learn about shouldn't be in a vacuum. It should actually be connected to something that affects either us personally or the people or the things that we care about. And I think one of the key things is that a lot of times the way that we teach students is we teach them, you might need this sometime down in the future. And that's the way a lot of people encountered algebra, was that you will need this one day, instead of actually diving into a situation that shows you straight away how and why algebra can be useful. And I think that goes for a lot of the sort of work that I'm doing. I'm still got students. I mean, I've got 320 students a week that come through my classroom, and that they're all at different stages. Some of them latch onto the ideas very, very quickly, and some of them are still sort of seeing what's the point of this. And that's at different stages of maturity, different life experiences, different expectations, and different degrees of willingness to embrace responsibility for things that lay further down the line. So I try not to judge personally the students too much. I try to sort of understand as much as I can, but like any teacher, I get cranky sometimes. So it's I really think it is. I think the key thing is that increasingly students need and want that that connection with what they're learning to be meaningful and to see a pathway forward with what they're learning. So I think that's the key thing is to understand that it can help them make a difference.
I see. It was amazing talking to you. It was such a nice experience. And the last question I have for you is, if anybody wants to reach out to you, how can you do so?
Look, I'm everywhere. My name is Kim Flintoff. I'm all over LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm very easy to find. Just type the name into Google and I pop up everywhere. My email and other contact details are out there. So feel free. I'm happy to take, as you found out, I'm happy to take connections from just about anywhere.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you have any questions in mind for Kim himself, reach out to him, reach out to me, do whatever you want. So yeah, thank you so much. Please, Kim, stay back after I start recording, and I hope we will be coming together more, more after this, now that we've done this, probably with more and more specific focus. And because I talk a lot about education with panel discussions and all. So I feel like that would be something that's very interesting. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you. Thank you.